right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochrane. Of course, I am joined today by the two Robs, and of course, my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Doing terrific, Todd. It's great to be back and having Rob on. We've been asking him to join us for a couple months now. He's been being a basketball coach over the last few months, so that's why he's not been able to join us. So it's great to have him on. Yeah, Saturday games. How'd your team do this year, Rob?
Well, last year we were 0-11, and this year we were 5-6. So great improvements. So I was proud of the boys.
That's great. That is great improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, well, good for them. It may have been a little improvement from the coach too, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I changed my coaching philosophy. I said no more plays, just pick and roll, or pass and pick. So it was a little bit more movement, and that seemed to work. And defense, we had to play nice pack-in zone defense.
Well, that's good. I'm of all the sports, I was somewhere yesterday and there was a basketball game on and people were aptly watching it. And I'm like, it's cool to be at the court and watch. And of course, if you're Norm Patterson and have seats right behind the Lakers bench, that would be fun. But otherwise, I'm not a basketball guy. So, but anyway. Hey, so anyway, we're going to welcome everyone to the New Media Show. We got a lot to talk about. We've got Rob on top here for about an hour. So we're going to bust through. But yes, this is episode 200 of the show. Rob, do you remember how many episodes we did with, what did we call it? The Saturday Morning Tech Show?
Tech Show, yeah. I think we did probably maybe 100 of those, probably.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look. But yeah, so this is actually like 300 or something. So anyway, but 200 of this show. So quite appropriately, we got lucky and got Rob on top with us today.
Well, I'm honored to be here for your 200th episode.
And for those of you that are listening, Rob Walsh is on the top monitor and Rob Greenlee's on the bottom monitor. So that's why I'm saying Rob on top. But anyway, there's the news is just, and I'm sure you guys are just as we're just busy and lots of stuff going on. And but you were out. Can we talk about your trip to New York a few weeks ago?
Well, it was DC. It was actually DC. Yes, it was DC to the NPR facility. I don't know how much, but I'll talk about what I think should be talked about.
Sure.
And we're talking about RAD, which stands for Remote Audio Data, and where they were looking at going with the spec when we came into the meeting. I'll tell you, I was very skeptical because they didn't think it had much legs, and there was a change at the meeting on the focus of it. There's still a big hurdle to get over, but in a nutshell, 10,000-foot view, the idea is to be able to get data back from the client-side applications to your hosting company or whoever your stats person company is. That will give you the same level of consumption data that Apple now provides. So it's basically, so you can see on a per episode basis how much your episodes are being consumed. That, in a nutshell, is where it's kind of come to. Now, the hurdle is getting the client-side applications, the Overcast and Shifty Jelly Pocket Cast and Podcast Addicts, to report that back. And then obviously the big one is Apple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we say client, what we're talking about is the listener end, the apps on all the platforms and the web players and all that stuff. It's getting data directly out of the playing side, right? Not the download side.
Correct.
So
if I switch into technical terms, server side is what we normally call the hosting company. That's where Libsyn, Blueberry, and Spreaker would come in. We can see your server side data when the requests come off the server, and then the client side is going to be Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, Overcast, Shifty Jelly Pocket Cast, where people actually consume it.
When we introduced Subscribe on Android, it took just to get 13 lines of code added to the Android apps that we worked with was pretty monumental. I think we launched with 7. I think we're up to 14 or 15 now, a couple years in. And we provided them the exact code. They just had to cut and paste. We told them where to put it. and it was no harder than that of an implementation, recompile, and then next time they updated their app, the code was in there to support that one-click subscribe on Android. So we're talking about integration at a wholly different level where they're going to have to put code in to track when someone plays, fast forward, scrubs. There's a lot of implementation that has to be done by the apps in order to make this happen. Did they talk about the level of work an app developer would have to do this?
So at the meeting, they split the group into two sides. And one side was more the biz dev side, and the other side was the tech side. So the tech side, we're talking about those issues. I was on the biz dev side. We had one of our lead dev was there, Greg, and he was on the tech side of it. He did say, from our perspective, from the server side, the implementation wasn't going to be difficult. But again, it is a client side issue. And like I said, that's the big hurdle, getting the client side to buy in. And what is the reason for them to buy in? Well, the main reason for everyone other than Apple is to give a level of data back that's equivalent to Apple so that the producers would then continue to promote those client-side applications as a viable place to consume the show. It doesn't ever mean pulling your content from a client that doesn't support it. I mean, some people might be dumb enough to do that, but we would never suggest that. But there is the point where you're going to say, hey, if you want to get your data back and you can choose between mentioning a few different applications, you may mention the ones where you actually do get the data back versus not. There's really no carrot, though, to offer the client side. And that's something that's going to have to be worked out. And there's calls coming up, and we've got one coming up here on the 5th to talk about some of these issues. And hopefully both of you guys will have people on the call as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's to me, there's two things to look at here for my perspective. I've always been cautious in that right now on the server side, we get a pretty, all three of us know, we get a pretty deep look at the data, and we have a set of guidelines that we're all working against to produce data that is comparable, hopefully within a few percentage points of each of our services. That was the goal of the IEB podcast measurement document. But so that's handled. My two concerns is, number one, how are podcast listeners going to react when they determine, people are sensitive right now already about how much information is being collected on them. So I'm going to play devil's advocate. What if I'm a listener and I don't want this data being shared, how much I'm listening of your show? Now, it's anonymized, but still, right. The listener doesn't feel that. They don't know that 100%.
Right. The goal on this is to tokenize, anonymize it, similar to what Apple does right now. Apple said that, hey, everybody on iOS 11 is actually, their data is actually being aggregated. It's anonymized, even if they opted out. I asked, now it was one person at Apple, and I asked, if people opt out of the data collection when you sign up on iOS 11, there's an option and don't share data. Evidently, that doesn't account for podcast. And if you consume a podcast on iOS 11, any iOS 11 device, your data is being shared anonymously. It's an anonymous token. You can even reset that token. So you get another token. But in this case, for all the other applications, it would be the similar thing. Anonymized data. We talked about the GDPR in there. I know on the technical side, they talked about the GDPR quite a bit. And the idea here is not to pass even back geographic information. It's just to pass back consumption information, figuring that you can take your geographic information that you're already getting a server side and combine it with this consumption data and figure out what you want. Now, you won't be able to say how many people from, Lynchburg, Virginia, or the Richmond, Virginia DMA are consuming 85% of the way through, but you'll be able to say how many people in aggregate are consuming 85% of the way through and project that out.
So for those of you that don't know what the GDPR is every internet-based company is facing an incredible deadline sometime in May, I think May 25th.
25th.
Where...
same day Han Solo comes out.
Essentially, the amount of data that we're allowed to collect and retain is, whoa. I mean, it's like, whoa, really limited. IP data, there's certain rules around it. We're having to retool our stats and how we collect, stack, and in order to comply with GPDR. This is not necessarily a small effort, because the EU has basically said you shall not you shall not collect, track, or even know who is using your services from the European Union. I guess maybe
what it comes down to is IP address is considered personal data.
Right.
So if a company was supplying raw server logs with IP address and you could see what each IP address was doing, you are outside the GDPR now.
That's
You're
right.
going to get fined.
Big fine.
And the European Union is like the United States record label industry. They are fine, happy. I mean, they don't mess around.
So for us, we've been looking at this for a while, and with the deadline dooming, the devs are now tearing into the code so that we can make sure that tokenize, I guess the better word, tokenize IPs, and I'll be frank, it's a pain in the ass. And the EU went, in my consideration, they went way, way to the right.
As they always do, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's, so we're having to retool to comply with GPDR. So if it's tokenized, then I guess they're going to be GPDR compliant, but still, what's the perception going to be of listeners thinking they're being, they're already being tracked in iOS 11. So maybe it's not a big stretch.
And I want to say this. I think getting this fully implemented and all the clients adopting it is in the same world as unicorns and flying pink elephants. It's a very big wish. I mean, I'm not in any way, shape, or form delusional thinking, oh, this is a slam dunk, or even close to even easy. This is going to be really difficult to get everybody on board. It's going to be work for the client side. And we came out of that meeting and no one ever answered the question, what really is in it for the clients to do this?
Right. Well, why should Overcast do this? Why should Jellycast do this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also is there a bigger agenda here too, which may or may not be bad. I don't know, but is there an agenda to kill downloads as part of this? I kind of wonder.
No? I don't think so. I mean, there's always a few fools that are in all these meetings that, but we can talk about blockchain and other folks like that later. But, there's always some people that they want what you get in the video streaming world, but that's not, those people aren't realistic, and they're a small group, and they represent a very small number of shows. So let's be realistic. Some of the most vocal people in the community, as everyone knows, represent the tiniest percentage of shows.
Yeah.
So let's also look at the, what's really the end benefit here. We already have an incredible metric point based upon the number one client in the space right now, Apple. We already are seeing data that confirms information that we've all known, which I laugh about. We've all known this for years, but yet the naysayers are all, we need this data because we don't have it, but we've all known this already. For me, the data was, I was okay. Could there have been a big surprise? Sure. But was there a big surprise? No. And I think for the majority of us, I think we've got the data set we need to go back to the advertisers and say, listen, 65% of my audience is listening to 95% of my show on average. What more do we need? Okay, so what do we have now, Rob, the Robs? We have, let's just, in one hand, I should bring up the clients list. How many apps are there total on the Android side? 15?
Well, here's what, let's take a look at it this way. How many client-side apps are there that matter?
All right.
7. Right?
And what percentage do they make up? 10 or less?
Yeah, I mean, those 7 are there's only 7 that are 1% or more in consumption.
Right.
Right. So everything else, and then there's maybe another 6 that are above 0.2%. Right. So there isn't many clients that really matter at the end of the day.
So let's say
I think we need to.
So we've got 65% of the data already with Apple, and we're going to get another. Let's be really generous and give them 10%. 10% on those 7 apps. So that takes us to 75% that we're going to have the client side play data to. Is it going to make that much of a difference?
No, I agree with you.
Okay, so is Google, whatever they're going to do, are they going to play? Is Apple going to play ball with RAD?
Okay, good. Here's where I think RAD has some value. If RAD is implemented by enough client-side, third-party clients,
all of
enough. Like let's take those 13,
sure,
and we get 10 of those 13 that drop below Apple. If they implement it, it may put pressure on Apple to open up an API to give us the data.
Oh, I think Apple.
And if RAD did nothing more than expedite Apple into releasing the data in an API for us to pull in for people's accounts, then I would consider RAD a success.
Apple they already said they're going to do this, but it's just time. Have they changed their mind?
Have they technically said they're going to do it? What they've said is, we hear you.
We were drinking a beer when they said it, so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean,
they actually need to, guys. I don't think that they actually need to. I think that the other players in the space, and maybe some new ones that are coming, I think would be more inclined to probably support this. But those are like you guys are saying. It's all small market share stuff that we're talking about here at this point. So it's always going to be just a sample of what's happening out there anyway. Because being able to capture 100% of the data, and I don't even know if that's the goal. Is the goal to get 100%? I don't know if it's even possible.
What I tell people when they look at if they take a screenshot of the Apple data and the consumption, on the left-hand side, it shows the magnitude. I say cut that off. Don't ever show the magnitude. All you want to show is a trend. What percentage of people are listening, where they drop out. That's what's important from the Apple data. The magnitude isn't accurate enough to matter. And you got the accurate number on that now on the server side. So you take your server side for magnitude, you take the client side from Apple to look at consumption trends. And then there's 2 things you learn from that: where people drop, and more importantly, where people don't drop.
Right.
I mean, if you can have an hour-long episode and you find 15 minutes where people don't drop out, that is the most valuable information you can get, because what did you say for 15 minutes that people didn't leave? And then repeat that in future episodes.
And here's the thing that makes me laugh again about this, and I guess maybe we're the only ones doing this, is that we've been providing, and it's not listen data, it's percentage of download data on people that are actively listening, not the people that are subscribed, the people that click play and then hit stop on their app. We've been provided percentage of download data to our enterprise clients for years, and so first thing we did is I brought up the enterprise client stats on one page, and I brought up the Apple stats on another screenshots they had provided me, and guess what? They lined up like a mirror, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. I'm just like, it made me kind of, I was just like, okay, I'm no surprise, and my information's validated. So, okay, that's cool. It's all they need is more assurances of information that we've already known for many years that they just don't believe they have enough data on. It cracks me up.
Well, there's folks that are 100% about the advertising and podcasting,
of course,
and they're just looking for anything because they come from a different world and they want to be able to talk to media buyers from a different side of things that are used to video data and live streaming data.
But we've already had that story, but they haven't believed it.
Right.
But the question is, are these advertisers? Did they evolve or change anything in their practices because of the new Apple data?
No,
I don't think that they have. I mean,
I know one thing that evolved. The post roll is dead.
The post roll,
yeah.
Big surprise.
The post roll has been terminated. That's what they got out of it. You know, they lost something, is what they did. They lost the post roll. Anyone that's selling post roll, okay, you better be given like 50 cents CPM on that bad boy.
But Todd, more and more people are listening to the end of their show, right? I know they're
It's
just not
in the-
listening
it's
to the
in
app.
the-
You know,
It's in the
There's a few
90s.
shows. There's a few shows that do, but boy, I'll tell you what, the majority,
Mm-mm.
it looks like the back end of the letter M.
That's right. It's 95, 96, 97, boom. You know, that's, 98, boom, they're gone.
Yeah.
As soon as they hear you making even a breath of your rapping, boom, they're gone.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I've seen that on my own show. It's like, and I just want to thank you again.
Gone.
I just want to thank Casper again for sponsoring, and it's like, zoop.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
Tom says agencies aren't asking for Apple data yet. Well, we're providing it to the agencies. You know, they may not be asking, but those of us that are talking to agencies, that's the first thing I put up. That's the slide I added immediately to our deck. Because it's confirmation. Again, it's confirmation of the same thing we've been saying for years. So it's okay. It's good.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the data Apple has given us. So, and I guess we'll see where RAD goes and if it gets implemented, but it's not the second coming of Jesus.
Well, and also, what's the future of pre-rolls too? I think it's an interesting question too. Are we going to see a stronger emphasis moving forward on the early mid-rolls, or just mid-rolls in general? And the whole pre-roll stop sign is something that hopefully we'll be a little bit smarter about as we move into the future and maybe do less and less. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I don't think the pre-roll was hurt in this information. I don't know, Rob, what do you think?
I don't think it was hurt, but I still think you get more value out of having a mid-roll because there's less people with their finger on the play and the fast-forward button.
Right.
So when you're listening
like
at the 5-minute mark, the phone's already now into your pocket or purse,
Mhm.
and they're less likely to hit the fast-forward. If the first thing they hear out of your mouth is Warby Parker or Casper, and then there's a little bit more likelihood that they're going to hit that fast-forward button.
Tom saying go ahead.
Or just stop listening altogether. Yeah.
Tom saying post-roll can work with curated channels of podcasts through like NPR. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that people are listening to curated channels. And I would have to see player proof that people are rolling from one to another without letting their finger off that. They're not listening. They're listening on. Okay, so what is the podcast NPR One app market share?
0.02%. That's what we have. 0.02%.
Okay, so all right.
Yeah, I mean, it is a on-demand medium.
Yeah.
I mean, that certainly isn't the paradigm that built this medium. Linear is fading. It's not a common listening practice as far as on the digital side. It still is on the radio side, but yeah,
it does open up an opportunity if someone figures out how to make it happen. If someone figures out how to make them stay to the end, and it allows you to become.
Why would they? I mean, what could they do to make that appealing?
Well, if they know they're going to be
giveaways,
if they know they're being sold to immediately, if they know there's an ad coming, no one specifically wants to listen to ads. Let's be honest.
Right.
We're running ad blockers on our websites. I got one running on mine right now. No one wants to. So the mid-roll is perfect, like you said, Rob. Your phone's in the pocket, and if you appreciate the podcaster and, you'll listen and support their sponsor. But I don't think it goes to the point where at the end we're going to do another pitch. At least to me, it doesn't make sense. I would hope
no one's going to say, you know what, I know he does an ad at the end. I just need to stick around for it. What they will say, though, is I know he does an ad at the end, and now the ad is started, so there's nothing I'm going to miss. So, okay, I'm going to go listen to the next episode.
So Tom says NPR One is doing fine, but it's doing fine with 0.02% of global market share.
Mm-hmm.
So it's irrelevant. Maybe for NPR, it's relevant. Let's have NPR tell us what the percentage of people that are listening to NPR are using that app.
Well, for the NPR shows, it's a higher percentage, obviously. But
Sure.
for other shows, third-party shows, we've got quite a few of them on there. The percentage is not good.
Well, let's be clear. National Public Radio has 42 podcasts. That's it. So there's not a lot of shows there. Now, granted, each of those 42 shows gets a lot of consumption.
I listen to not a one of them.
Yeah.
Personally.
But it's still not a huge percentage of the marketplace.
Right.
Now, there are some other NPR shows out there beyond the NPR main ones. There's NPR affiliate shows, and there's a lot of NPR affiliate shows, and you probably, both of you probably host a few of them. We host a few of those affiliate programs as well. Some of them do well, some of them not so much.
Yep.
And it's largely because...
Yeah, and what's the total number of all those? Yeah.
There's
probably 300 shows, maybe?
Well, right.
Yeah, and it's because of the NPR name is where this fascination goes with, everyone thinks that they're ruling the podcasting space.
What was funny, one of the people at the Red was talking with me, and he was an old-time NPR person, and he said to me, he goes, the whole idea behind NPR when it was first created was to give anybody a voice. And he goes, and then podcasting came out, 12 years ago. And NPR said, well, we didn't mean that anyone. We didn't really everyone. So he goes, inside NPR, there are some people that, look down at the indie podcasters. Whereas the irony of it is the indie podcasters are exactly why NPR was created to start with, was to give anyone a voice. So podcasting really is fulfilling the whole reason that NPR was created to start with. So I just thought that was an interesting side conversation I had. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Well, going back to the RAD, there is a few people probably interested how this actually works. So, what is the actual podcaster's implementation? What do they have to do if RAD gets adopted? Let's say it's going to be adopted by 10 apps. Let's say it does. What does the podcaster have to do?
The podcaster probably won't have to do anything if they're hosting on a company that's going to support RAD for them. If they are hosting on a company that's going to support them, that company is going to put some metadata into their ID3 tags, going to overwrite their ID3 tags, and it's going to the clients are going to pull from the ID3 tag information. It's an easy implementation. All of us have the ability to write into ID3 tags. So it's not anything overly complicated from a technical point of view for your hosting company. If you're self-hosting, well, then you're probably SOL.
Yeah, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
So then how does the data stay? Okay, let's go back to our side. How does the data, and I already know these answers, I'm just doing this for the audience. How is there separation of church and state? How do I not get Libsyn data when it's...
In that ID3 tag information, it's going to tell you where to ping that data home to. So basically going to tell you the home phone number of that show. And this is where you need to send the data to.
Then on the client side, on the app, then when someone hits stop, the client app is then responsible for pinging Libsyn or Blueberry or Spreaker with the stop message saying they've stopped. And that's going to,
And then for us, we have to then have a data warehouse where we collect that data information and then sort it and process it and report it back to the clients.
And tokenize it.
And the users, I should say. I don't want to say, yeah.
And tokenize it.
Producers.
Yeah.
Producers. Right, producers. Get our terminology here straight.
And because
go
ahead, Rob.
Is there any talk? I'm kind of changing the direction of the talk here, but is there any talk about any kind of central repository of podcast data that's coming out of this group?
Oh,
not that I'm aware of, and there better not be one. So that's another issue. That's another huge privacy issue. We couldn't support that.
So there is no centralized. There's no gatekeeper per se.
Correct. There's not meant to be a gatekeeper.
Okay, because of the ID.
They'll show you block diagrams of examples of how it works, and in that block diagram, it'll show you NPR. But that's only because it's NPR getting data back on their own shows.
Right.
But it's not that there's no centralized data warehouse that is controlled by somebody who has access to everybody's data. Absolutely not. The idea here is not for that to happen.
Okay, so because of the ID3 tag data with the embed that's in there, it says call Blueberry, or call Libsyn, or call Spreaker, or call Podbean, or whoever, then that data goes straight to them, and that's how there is no centralized warehousing of the information.
Correct.
All right. Unless the app developer, this could be turned on us here, folks. The app developers could say, okay, you want this data, write me a check.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this isn't all about advertising.
Yeah.
And I'll say, when the RAD conversation started, it seemed to be mostly about advertising, and it did shift to, hey, there's more than just people advertising. There is actually the other 93% of shows that have no chance of advertising, and they just want the data just to see how their shows are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So for the majority of shows, this will never be about monetizing through advertising. This isn't about sharing with advertisers. This is just to know how the shows are doing, so the shows can improve and get better.
It gives them good intelligence on what's happening throughout the show when people are stopping, and that's and even the Apple data doesn't give you a super granular look at that. It's not perfect either. They could go a lot deeper in what they're providing as well.
So is there any that you guys know? Is there any connection between this data and Nielsen at all? Because I know Nielsen, I'm sure, would love to get access to this.
Oh,
does Nielsen even play in our space?
Well, they're trying, as you
Honestly,
know.
Do they? I mean, really, they don't. They promised, they were going to get an integration with Apple at one point in some meeting, and I'm like, really? You're going to get integrated in iTunes? Did you actually talk to Apple about that? Oh, well, we're Nielsen. I'm like, yes. How did that work out?
Yeah.
I'm switching between you two and your facial reactions, and it's pretty entertaining.
But let's be realistic. I mean, where does Nielsen has no play in the podcast space? They have no footprint here at all. They are not an entity at all in the space. They may want to be. They may claim that they're going to be, but I don't think they could actually legitimately say they have any.
Well, they have an SDK, a client-side SDK, right? And then they also are
who's implemented it?
No one.
I know, exactly. And
or maybe, but we just don't know.
But somehow they're gathering data on podcasters. I got handed it was like a multi-fold flyer from them. I can't remember. I think it was at Podcast Movement, I think, that had all of these kind of psychographic, demographic groupings of podcast listeners. So they're trying to map people's willingness to purchase off of advertising based on their kind of demographic profile. So certain categories of products they've mapped to podcasts, and what the conclusion of what this flyer thing that I saw is that pretty much it doesn't matter what podcast that you run your advertising on. It's still going to bring in an ROI. I mean, certainly certain genres of content in the podcasting space produce better results on the ROI on advertising, but generally you can basically take any ad and run it in a podcast, and it's going to produce results.
According to them.
According to them. And I would guarantee if you looked at those genres that did the best, the consumption skews higher female.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So here's the bottom line on all this is, if RAD does produce shows or produce clients that implement it, so if they do get, let's say they get the top 10 that implement it both on the Android and Apple side, even if one implements it, each of us are going to code up and have the data available in your podcast stats. It's something we're going to definitely provide. So for I would probably think that, between the three of us, maybe Podbean, we're the four biggest, and when it comes to actually providing stats to podcasters, probably by far.
and RAD is going to be open, and they're going to be, have the meetings, and it was a smaller group in that first call or first face-to-face. But they did say they're going to be more open. They're going to have the next face-to-face is planned at Podcast Movement. So the next one will be in Philly, so that there'll be more people from the industry that can be part of that face-to-face. So, talking with Brian, they do want to make it more inclusive, not exclusive. They want to bring everybody in on this, which I'm very happy to hear. It's not just a secret cabal. It's not, this private meetings that happen by a certain person that runs a newsletter that you're not allowed to talk about. I probably am not supposed to be talking as much about this as anyway, because they're getting ready to release a press release on this. But I believe in public information on this, and hopefully we'll get a lot of the players in, and it's my goal is to see clients adopt this. I'm still not convinced there's a big enough carrot or any carrot for the clients to do it yet, though.
The only carrot will be is when the first one does it and they have it and the others don't. That's what happened with Subscribe on Android. When you get 3 or 4 to implement, then there's pressure. That's the only way we made Subscribe on Android work. Is the other? I said, hey, here's 13 apps that have it. You're not on the list, and here's 13 lines. Here's 13 lines of code. You just need to cut and paste. So I think it also depends on how hard the technical implementation is. So,
I would start inviting those clients that you have relationships with to these calls.
Well, NPR should have had them. Those are the ones that should have been invited to Washington, D.C. Was there any app developers at the meeting in D.C.?
Stitcher was there.
Okay.
Into Bankruptcy Heart was there.
Okay.
But yeah, there was a few.
A few.
That
good.
were there.
Oh, good. But, if any of you or any of you clients are watching, we'd love to have you on the show so we can talk about what it's going to take on your side to do this. Let's find out, what it's going to take for them to do it. So, we're going to support if it gets implemented. Yeah, the key is if it gets implemented.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will as well. I mean, it's certainly not a bad idea. It's actually a good idea.
It's data.
If we can get this data, and we can get it from a large pool of client players out there, then it's good. It's pretty good data. So I mean, it's
another
never 10. Perfect.
It's another 10%, Rob.
Yeah, it's never going to be perfect.
I think we can get 15. I think we can get 15.
Oh well, that's okay. That'd be good.
And if Apple doesn't support it, I mean, as long as it's similar kind of capture data than what Apple's capturing, then we just, that's okay. We don't need Apple at that point, I suppose.
Well, we combine the two. You always need Apple.
Always need Apple.
Well, no, but I'm just saying,
you always
is
need
it
Apple.
unrealistic to think that they're going to do it when they already are capturing the data in their way?
Apple's not going to implement RAD.
Yeah. Oh, they're not going to implement. By the way, I don't think Apple will implement RAD.
Ever.
What I think, though, is Apple may at some point, hopefully at some point, will give us an API, and then we can take Apple's data and combine it with the RAD data and have, it doesn't, what do you call the combined thing, but it'll be more data. That's all I care about. More data, right? More data is good. Less data is bad. I think we're all data junkies, right? And we all believe that. And if we could get Apple's data combined with the RAD data, and then we can even contrast and say, hey, look, here's how it looks on Apple's side, and here's how it looks on these other sides, and kind of get a feel for which applications are actually even doing best. I think you may find that an Overcast does better than some other applications because Overcast is geared towards consumption.
I think it's
might find some.
Yeah, I think it's creitical for those calls back to us to know which app is sending us the data too. So hopefully that's in the tech spec so that we'll know that Overcast, we'll know the percentages per app, and we'll be able to break it down by app. Yeah. And that's compelling too. When your app is not on the list of stats, then again, peer pressure.
I don't know if Spotify is going to be on board or not, but I'm getting a sense that some of these new players, maybe that are coming in the future, seem to be supportive of it.
No, Rob's referring to Google. He's not saying it, but
Well, the question is Google going to do it right, or are they going to screw up and do it like they did with GPM?
I don't know. It's
we all know Google is
see, Rob can't say too much. I'll just tell you, Rob's under the piece of paper where he can't talk too much. So, Rob, can you say anything?
Not too much more than that. No.
Yeah, I'll give my opinion. At the end of the day, if Google comes in, that will definitely raise the tide. But it's never going to have the influence and the power that Apple has. So even if they do it right this next time, they could become a solid number 2, but they won't be a number 1.
I'll say this: I had a call this week, and it was enlightening in that the person I was talking to had not considered some of the things that we talk about when it comes to companies doing implementations of podcasting on their systems. And I think what I'm finding is that they've been talking to individuals with agendas, and they haven't been talking to companies that have creators as their main priority.
Right.
So there's if you have suits have a certain priority, and then creators have a priority. And so it was a very, very, very productive conversation. And I hung up from it feeling win. I just had a win there. That was a win. We've got an additional thought point added to the space. And I encourage that team to, listen to shows like this and to get out and talk with the space and come to podcast movement. And even if you come incognito, to come and talk to podcasters because they live in a different bubble. And
my biggest fear is this for what Google does next. They're going to lead with how do we monetize this? And if their main emphasis and focus is on monetization, it will fail. Because the first focus needs to be, how do we make this good for the end users? How do we make this good for the people that want to consume the content? How do we make it easy for that? If their first foray into this is listening to the people that have the agendas, and it's about monetization, it will fail miserably, and Spotify will remain the solid number 2. Spotify in our system already is solid number 2, and I think it's growing. Google will have to fight to get to number 2, and only will succeed is if it's about consumption first.
I think they have I think all these groups have an opportunity. I think Spotify, Google, all these big players. Let's just be frank. They need to make money. They got to stay in business. iHeart is $20 billion in debt. And they went on they spent money like a drunken sailor and didn't have a printing press to print cash when their notes come due. So that rooster's coming home to roost.
They defaulted on 2 bound payments now. So the second one was this week.
So they're all talking
they're moving into bankruptcy.
Yeah,
right now.
and the vultures are circling. So, but if they move into the space, they got to pay the bills. I have no problem with Google, Spotify, or whoever joins the space figuring out how to pay for this. The play I've continued to tell these big groups, and I say, please, please, please don't restrict what the podcasters are allowed to put in their content. Allow them to continue to monetize the way they have been. And if you find some kindness in your heart to do a revenue split on any ads that you run, I said, you got a winner. You got a winner, chicken dinner. If someone's going to run a pre-roll against my content on a platform, doesn't matter what platform, and they write me a check for that pre-roll delivery on a little rev share, guess who I am going to promote like crazy? I'm going to promote that platform to the 10th degree because they understand I have to feed my family. and they have to make money at the same time. I'm not asking for a lot. They don't have to do 50-50, but give us a taste, and I think they'll have a big winner. Big winner.
Yeah, and I think what's happening in the space right now is the breaking of dynamic ad insertion across Spotify and even Google Play, and who knows if we see Pandora get into this, they may try and do this caching practice as well that kind of breaks the centralized monetization models that are currently being built. And these are topics that I'm out there talking about. I think there's a lot of people, obviously, in the podcasting space that don't necessarily like the whole dynamic ad insertion thing, but I think it's a tool that can be used properly if it's done right. But the problem is that we have right now is that the ecosystem is breaking, and hopefully what we'll see, like Todd, you were just saying, if these platforms can develop ways that maybe they want to monetize because that's how the only way they can pay for the development of their platform, that they do rev share, just like what you said, just to those platforms, like Spotify specifically. If there can be some sort of a revenue share that happens with podcasters after they've captured your episode. I think these things are part of the solution. Right now, the models are broken. I don't know what both of you guys think of this, but that's how I see it moving towards. It's just a matter of we're not there yet.
I think it's pretty simple, Rob. We just have to all tell them, please let us send you a signal to recache my content. That's all. And if they say, okay, we'll recache your content if you send us a signal.
Well, no, but Todd, they're saying they don't want any pre-rolls in that content at all, or mid-rolls or anything like that. And that's the problem. So they're asking for feeds from us that will be free of any kind of dynamic ad inserted advertising.
But it's a media file. They don't know if it's inserted or not.
Yeah, and it depends on the service too.
Yeah.
I mean, Spotify doesn't care if you have ads.
No, Spotify doesn't care if you have ads.
No. Host reads is the only thing. If you read the contract, the contract says you cannot have any dynamically inserted advertising in your show.
Well,
Well, it dynamically doesn't work with Spotify because they pull one copy. So it's irrelevant, right?
Correct.
And then people that are doing the real dynamic constant, serving up 50, 60, 100 different versions of the files.
And it's happening.
The repinging is irrelevant. That doesn't work for them at all anyway.
Right.
So the repinging only works if you have a static one single ad that's being delivered to to everybody globally. But if you have one ad for Dayton, Ohio, one for Columbus, and one for Cleveland, forget it. It's not going to work. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Spotify.
So that's the big challenge. Yeah.
That is what it is, and you have to choose at that point if you're the person doing dynamic ads into your show. If you want your show on Spotify, which is again on our servers, we gave out these numbers in January, represented 5.13% of our downloads for 13% of our shows. With only 13% of shows in Spotify. So the numbers are solid for us. I mean, Spotify clearly is a solid number 2, and Overcast is number 3. That's how we look.
Yeah, let's be clear about the whole dynamic ad insertion thing too. It's not always about advertisements too, and I'm not saying that Spotify would necessarily distinguish. Just the fact that you're using dynamic ad insertion as the pure filter of being able to be in there, because I know some shows use the dynamic ad insertion technology to do promos at the beginning of their show. They do branding IDs. They use the dynamic ad insertion technology for content too. So it's not so much about that. I think Spotify is just not wanting pre-rolls and post-rolls being dynamically inserted into this content, because I think they have ambitions to put ads in those positions if you look into the future. And we just don't know if there's a ad revenue share program coming down the line or not, or if Spotify is just going to keep all that.
Well, here's the deal. I keep saying the price of being on Spotify is letting Spotify do what they want to do, and if you want to be over there, they got to make money.
Right.
That's right.
I mean, the basic agreement is they won't cut your content up and they won't put ads in the middle of it. But what happens before and after your episode, that's up to Spotify. They let you keep what's in your content in your content. That means you can have ads in there. Yep. And you have to understand that's a big deal for Spotify because they have a premium ad-free only solution for people and they're listening to podcasts that now have ads in the middle. So they have a lot of explaining they had to do to their premium customers to tell them why they're hearing ads on quote unquote ad-free content. That was big of Spotify to allow people to leave ads in. I mean, that was a huge negotiating point. It took a long time to allow them to allow that. And the agreement was, okay, well, you can put stuff at the beginning and end, and you keep it. And we're like, I know how much Spotify pays musicians. It's nothing. So if they were to pay you for the ads, it's going to be nothing anyway. And you have to, at the end of the day, the choice was, do we care about promotion or monetization? And I felt the promotion was a much greater value for the indie podcasters.
Distribution.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Distribution. I don't care where they listen, as long as they listen.
But it could put Spotify in a situation where, for big content creators, they're going to have to get into special deals because there are big publishers out there that are not going to like their model for obvious reasons.
Well, you know something. Last night, how big is Spotify?
Huge.
So okay.
It's funny. This past week, we kind of had an opposite thing going on. We had iHeart going into bankruptcy, and Spotify announcing that they're public, they're filing.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They're going public. And
things are changing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Spotify, they get 100 million active users. I mean, it's not that they have 100 million users. They have 100 million people that over 100 million that come in each month and are actively engaged with that app, which that's a big deal.
Yeah,
I don't care how they listen, as long as they listen.
Exactly. That has always been my motto as a podcaster. I just want people to listen. Everywhere.
And here's the thing, Rob. I understand where you're coming from because I'm putting together. We're getting ready to launch our ad injection system, marketplace. We all know where everyone's going. There's no secret in any of that because the handwriting's on the wall. But in the end, as a content creator, I do a podcast. I I'm an indie podcaster. I do my own ad deals for my show. If I have something that comes through Raw Voice, it works and it fits. Sure, I slide my show in there. Okay, so I have that advantage. But in the end, who do we serve? We serve the average. We got some big clients. We all do. We all have some top tier clients, but the majority. 95% of our clients are the folks that are listening to the show right now that are all they care about is, can I make enough money to take mama to dinner, make a car payment, maybe a house payment, and someday maybe be able to quit my day job. And some don't care about making money. So in the end, my constituents, they have elected me as their service provider. I'm here to watch out for them and take care of them. That's my job. What the big networks do, they're going to have to fight that battle.
And if some of the big guys don't like the terms of Spotify and decide to not put their content up there,
great. That's
their stupidity, and it's a windfall for us because people aren't going to leave Spotify because Serial isn't on there, right? I don't care. They're not going to leave Spotify because the latest thing from Gimlet didn't go up there,
right?
It's true because they're there for other reasons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess we'll see. And we're all happy that they're playing in a space where I'm happy they've expanded. I'm glad Rob doesn't have the monopoly on the Spotify submissions anymore. So
I can't say I'm happy about that, but
okay. Well, I know you're not.
No, I don't. Look, I just want people to be able to get in there, and Spotify has changed. They've added the ability now to play at a different speed, which is nice. It's now more of a podcast playback. You can listen at 1.5 speed, which is what I do for everything.
Yay for podfasters! Yes.
Right. Yeah, and we do need more podcasts in Spotify. And look, I was yelling at them for a long time. Open up, but they were like, "Hey, we're writing our algorithms. We're trying to figure this out. We can't do too many shows at once. We want to figure out this so that when we finally do get it rolled out, that we can actually do some recommendations. And that was their thing, and they did finally open it up. And to their credit, they've been letting the shows in. They're not, as near as I can tell, censoring, which is great. So it's an open community now. Obviously, if you have music, that's a different story.
It's a challenge. Yep.
That's legal reasons for that. But as far as your content, they don't care if you're religious or atheist. They'll let you in. Do
we have an idea of how many shows are in the catalog at this point? Are the 10,000, 5,000? Do we have any clue?
Well, I know what we've submitted. So, and it's, I've got my first batch in, and then the next batch will be automated. But the first batch I had to submit was manual.
Yeah.
It's definitely to do that. It's definitely in the thousands, because we're in the thousands that are in there. I don't know if it's in the tens, multiple tens of thousands yet, but I would be shocked if it's not over 10,000.
Yeah, it'll go over 10,000 quick with all of us now submitting.
And it'll grow, and it's going to continue to grow, and it's a good thing. It's nice. Look, I look at it this way: it's nice to finally have a solid number 2. How long have we been in the industry? The last time there was a solid number 2, it was Zune.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that was the last number 2 I can think of.
Yeah, and then for a while, Stitcher made it as high as 7%, but they've dropped off the. Mm-hmm. They fell off the planet. Mm-hmm. So, it's. I think it's good for the space. I think we're and we'll see who else joins the party here over the next year. And
it would be nice to see Pandora, but I don't know if podcasting is going to work with their culture. Their culture is not about letting you pick what you want to listen to. That's a big difference.
It's a linear experience, That gets back to our earlier conversation. Is there a model there? I don't know. I mean, maybe personalized playlists is the only possible way.
Mm-hmm. They're going to have to change their thinking of content, because they have not had an on-demand mentality.
Well, they did shift here recently over to supporting programmatic ad buying, which I thought was maybe a little bit of an interesting clue to maybe a change in direction for them.
Well, I think you just look at their announcements, what they have made. They've had some public announcements, so I'm hopeful for Pandora. What their CEO has said, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, Tim always said that he wanted to support spoken word content on the platform. He just wasn't sure how or when that would ever happen. So that's the founder of the company.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a couple of interviews that he did where he was talking about that. And it'd be great they've been kicking the tires for a while now. So we'll see. Is the only thing we can say.
Was there anything in these two topics we wanted to talk a little bit more? I've got a couple of things I want to get into. It's just some regular news items that have popped up. Rob, is there anything I know you got to go soon, but is there anything you want to promote that you've seen that you're talking about that's tip of mind?
I was at NRB with Mackenzie and Angelo. We're there. And NRB is National Religious Broadcasters, and actually Proclaim 18 is what it's called now. It was interesting. This was our 4th year there. The first year, it was a lot of what is a podcast, and the second year, what is a podcast. Last year, not as much. This year, I didn't get a single what is a podcast. I got a what do you do, but I didn't get a single what is a podcast reply to anyone I talk with, which I thought was very telling. So that community has, in a few years, come around and understands what a podcast is embracing podcasts. There was a booth across from me where they were interviewing people, and they had a lot of people coming in and out, and a lot of them had podcasts. I mean, there was one that was on Blueberry, Lucas Miles, which is a popular religious one, and I heard him talk and mention and promote his podcast.
Yeah, I've just got word from the team. They seem to be, the first day there's always seems to be the busy day, then everything drops off. But they seem steady, and Angelo seems pretty happy with the traffic. It's a lot better than what it was down in Florida. As a matter of fact, they had a discussion with the organizer to make sure there wouldn't be a repeat of Florida in the follow-on year when it goes to California. So
Well, that's a much better venue. Because that was the last. Well,
it's in Anaheim next.
Well, but this year's event was in Nashville,
right?
So this year's Nashville. Next year will be Anaheim.
Yeah. So
end of March next year.
And I
didn't go this year. So
I will say this: the event organizer understood the ramifications. I think they got lots of feedback from Florida.
Yeah.
And I'll say that lightly. And so I think they've learned their lesson there. So hopefully Anaheim, they'll not have a repeat of Florida and be more in line with the traffic patterns of Nashville.
Hey, Rob, did you get a sense that the leadership of the National Religious Broadcasters was more and more supportive of podcasting on the content side?
Oh, no, not at all.
Not at all? Okay.
No. Yeah, I mean, I've tried to talk to them about doing sessions and have a track of podcasting, and it completely been blown off every year, including this past year. I mean, I've tried to beg them, plead them, embarrass them.
Yeah.
Nothing worked.
Yeah.
It's still a bunch of old radio folks.
Yeah.
It's still a bunch of old radio folks, and if you don't have a call symbol, they just look. They look down their nose. Now, as part of that, I'll say this: part of the reason they don't like podcasting, some of them there don't like podcasting, is it hurts their bottom line. A lot of these radio stations, they sell airtime to the preachers, and when a preacher can go out and just have a podcast and get a bigger audience, they don't need the radio station. So some of them, podcasting isn't just looked at as a threat; it is a real, legitimate threat. It is. I mean, I had people coming up to me telling me how much they're paying to be on the air, and I'm like, "Are you insane?" And they're like, "Well," I'm like, "How many people you got?" "Well, I think we get this reach." I'm like, "Oh, well, here's how much we cost," and they're like, "What? That's it? Oh, why am I not doing that?"
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Let's talk just real quickly about NAB and the podcast track there. I'm a little irritated. How about you guys?
Well, we were talking we should all wear red and white striped shirts and a little hat, because our booth, our section, the podcast pavilion, is hidden. If you can find us, you want to be there. So the good news is anybody that actually comes by our booths at NAB actually really wants to be there. There is no stumble upon traffic. There is no stumble upon traffic. I'm bringing the good chocolate, the really good ones. I might as well go up to the really high end chocolate, because we are hidden. I mean, when I say hidden, there's two main areas you can walk down. Then there's booths, 10 foot wide booths, and then in between that is us. And to get to our area, there's two big pillars blocking you. So you have to go down a little bit further to walk over to come down and around.
They moved us closer to the front, and then they shimmied us in between the area. My smoke came out of my ears.
Yeah, I said, this is horrible. Where they put, oh, no, you're closer to the front.
Yeah.
Closer to the front and hidden.
Yeah.
So the good news is we only sending 2 people now, because I looked at that and I went, oh, great. I can't justify sending 3 people to this show now.
I changed up my complete marketing strategy because of a booth move. Mm-hmm. I've completely had to change what we were, what we had planned. Because I know I have to get the traffic to the booth. They're not going to find me. There's just no way they're going to just find me. Not if they're walking the floor. Yeah. So, and then, then the session stuff, I've heard nothing about sessions. I guess Podcast Movement's running the sessions. I don't know. I've seen no schedule for the sessions. Have you guys seen anything on the sessions?
Oh yeah, it's all set mostly already. Yeah.
All I know is I'm on a panel at 9 a.m. on Wednesday.
I've heard nothing.
10:20.
I've heard nothing about the sessions. Nothing promoted. No schedule. So again, and where is that going to be? Is that going to be near us, or is that going to be south 40, 50, 100 feet away, or where?
It'll probably be up on the North Hall, I would imagine.
It's going to be up where we were last year at the kind of the radio track, or the radio.
So in a completely different building, and they had originally said, well, we're going to let you use a little area that's close, which would have been better.
There is a little presentation area that's going to be right next to us. That there's going to be presentations that are being presented on podcasting.
By
I'm not
who?
sure yet. I'm not sure yet. I haven't heard. So
okay.
But I know I'm involved in a session. I think just after Rob, I think I'm going to be moderating a session.
Who organized it? I heard nothing.
I guess Josh. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would reach out to Josh.
Ping Josh.
So.
All right.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a half-hearted effort on their part, but it is more than what we had last year.
If they have one shot with me on this. If we don't get traffic, if it's, I won't come back.
Well, I mean,
it's expensive.
I'm sending my other girl home on Thursday, the last Thursday. So I'll only be one person there the last day. I don't see a reason to have two people.
There was a lot of promises made, and as far as I'm concerned, they haven't delivered. So we'll see. So if you're going to be at NAB, come see us.
Please, no, please come see us. Podcast Pavilion, hidden in the South Hall.
Yeah, tucked away in the back. No, but I'm working with the NAB live show folks too to try and get a podcasting session as part of their live stream that they have on their homepage.
Well, they can come see us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will probably have, I'm working with LiveView, and there will be an opportunity if you stop by the booth and you're a content creator, you will be able to get on the LiveView big screen from my booth. You'll be able to get on the LiveView big screen in their booth and be on the LiveView, on the actual LiveView NAB feed.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah, and that was because I've done that show. I usually go as press, not as an exhibitor. So,
yeah, I wonder if Loria's going to be there again this year for
doing
live stream.
40 hours of live, but about killed her. I don't know.
Yeah,
there's a report out
with the Airstream trailer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know if Leo's going to be there. He said they were going to start doing shows more. But he wasn't at CES in a big way, so I don't know if they're going to be back at NAB or not. So a year ago, I thought based on the comments they'd made, they figured out they needed to be back at these events, and we're talking about twit.tv. So we'll see if they're there doing anything live.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
BBC saying they saw a 12% increase in podcast downloads in the UK in 1 year. 12%.
This past year?
Yeah, that's
just
not
this past year.
Well, that's low.
That's low. It's really low.
Yeah, we saw a bigger increase than that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be bragging about that. That to me is low.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of Kirkland doing the pod news? He's been doing a pretty good job getting content out, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's been digging a lot of stuff up. The pod folks are continuing to rock too with all their stuff that they've got going on.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of information in the space. It's
that's not just geared towards the NYDC bubble.
Yeah,
It's nice to see people actually looking at more than just what happens in New York and DC.
Yeah, I'd recommend you guys go over to podnews.net and subscribe to that newsletter. It's a weekly. You get it daily, Monday through Friday, and it's got all the headlines that have come out and anything that he finds interesting. He's done a pretty good job on that so far. And he's got a what do you call it? The funding thing, Patreon.
Yeah.
He's got a pretty good group of Patreons right now too that are supporting his pod news. So definitely go over there and check that out at podnews.net. Yeah, because Nick has become completely irrelevant. I don't even read his newsletters anymore. I just delete them.
Well, he's claimed he doesn't care about anything other than that industry. That's all he cares about, really, to report. And the problem is people don't understand that. They don't know that. So it's really not. I wouldn't say it's his fault. I mean, he wants to report what he wants to report. That's great. But unfortunately, some people take what he reports as being the whole industry when it's really 1% of the industry.
Yeah. Well, those are mainly his contacts that he focuses on, or is that side of the industry. So that's where he gets his information from.
Anything else that you guys have seen going on in space? Any tidbits or any wowzers? Or
have you guys already covered blockchain?
Why don't you tell us a little bit about blockchain, Rob?
I don't know. See, I keep hearing blockchain this, blockchain that. To me, it seems like this is the same people that used to run around saying OGG. You need to do OGG format, and then the same ones that say, oh, you need to have chapter marks. It's the theoretical perfection versus the practical reality world. I just don't see the blockchain stuff. RSS is fine. It not just fine. RSS is great, and it supports what we need to do. I don't see the need for blockchain. Is there a theoretical way you can look at it where it's better? Maybe, but better doesn't, in a technical perspective, doesn't mean better in a practical perspective.
So why don't you explain a little bit of what that is? I mean, it's not another distribution methodology, is it?
I haven't seen a really great explanation of exactly why it has any advantages over what we have currently. To me, it seems like someone doesn't like it. I think it comes down to two groups. One that thinks RSS is too old because they came into the space after RSS and they have this belief that they can do it something better than what was already there. Yeah. And two, the people just don't understand the value of RSS and the democratization and the privacy that comes with RSS.
RSS is, as we talked about on the last show, is a great equalizer. If you didn't hang around to the end of the last show, you missed last 30 minutes was worth the. Just go back to it and scrub all the way to an hour and a half and then listen.
Because we've gone through this before somewhat too. There was a time in this industry when the whole BitTorrent thing was talked about as an alternative distribution method for podcasts. That it never really got traction.
Libsyn supported BitTorrent in the early days.
Yeah,
yeah.
I had a feed that was a BitTorrent feed.
Mm-hmm. And what's happened to BitTorrent? Is it basically it's dead because of the whole
BitTorrent people moved to blockchain.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Because in essence, blockchain is kind of a little. Well, it has some similarities to blockchain, so yeah, it's kind of funny.
Blockchain has its places, but I just don't see it in the podcast distribution world.
Yeah,
you're wrong.
We'll see, but I'll tell you this: RSS prevents anyone from trying to exert their influence on creators.
Yep.
That's the key. That's just, in a nutshell, they can't stop podcasting. No one can come in and be, I'm the ruler. You just laugh at them, go away.
Do we need to take another run at RSS though? I know Dave Weiner certainly wouldn't be the one to lead anything like that, but is there anything that you guys can think about or think that maybe as we think about the future of this medium that there's something that could be done to improve RSS2, maybe RSS3?
Rob,
something like that?
There's huge opportunity to coalesce around some tags and just do our own extension of RSS 2.0. There is huge opportunity to do that.
It's just how are we going to do it?
Well,
Apple's did it. Apple did it a little bit last year. Well, they added some additional tags. Yeah. Right. They added some more tags.
The key is getting everyone to support it and agree to, you can do it. We did ours. We've got an extension, but has anyone else adopted it? No. So that's the problem. The only way you can really get something, if an Apple, they can force the hand. They can say, here's what our new tags are. You better support it. And,
I guess the question is, is podcasting really the most significant supporter of the RSS2 spec right now of any media?
Blogs, the blogging community still is powered by RSS.
Yeah, but aren't they the 0.91 spec?
Well, they still can. The only difference, the 2.0 adds the only thing that the enclosure. So,
It's
but
the
it's
enclosure
but
part. Yeah.
but most podcasters or most bloggers are on the 2.0 spec.
Okay.
It just seems like, and maybe that's a project for a similar kind of deal as what's happening with this this RAD thing. Maybe there's another work group that can come together. I don't know how that would be organized or who's really in charge of that. Or is there any organization that exists? I think it was the WC3 that was involved into it at one point. Is WC3 still operating?
Well, it wouldn't. We wouldn't. I don't think we would have success in doing RSS 3.0. I think what we could potentially have success was if we could get enough people not to leave their agendas at the door to come come together for the common good of the space. I think we could come up with a set of tags that we could all implement. There's a lot of stuff you can do with tags that would, especially when it comes to ad injection. There's all kinds of cool stuff we could add to RSS. That would really help the space a lot, but I've got an agenda.
Everybody does, Todd.
But it works. In things, anything you add would not break the existing system. So you could add tags and not have the system be broke because of it. The system would still continue to hammer on. I think getting to RS 3.0 that's no way. I don't think it'll ever happen. But
all right, gentlemen, I'm going to have to run.
All right, hey Rob, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
congratulations on 200 for the reboot.
Yeah,
and see you gentlemen in about 1 month.
Yeah, how can people reach you here?
My own podcast, personally, if you're an iPhone user, definitely not an Android user, todayinios.com. And also, I do a feed, the podcast, The Feed with Elsie Escobar. And you go to thefeed.libsyn.com. And then if you ever want to email me, I put my email out there all the time, Rob, R-O-B, @libsyn.com, LIBSYN.com.
That's the way we do it. All right. Have fun,
gentlemen,
and tell your wife thank you for letting us borrow you for an hour and 20 minutes.
All right.
Yeah.
Out to the doghouse I go.
All right.
Okay.
Bye,
John. Rob. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so.
All right.
Well, that was good.
Yeah, it was good to have Rob on.
Yeah.
Always is. Yeah.
People will say, how can you three be friends but yet be competitors?
Because we're still competitors and we're still friends.
That's right.
That's kind of how it works.
Yeah.
Well, I think, if you think about it, we all go much further back in our knowing each other than even before we were competitors. So it's not unusual for us to be at this level of contact and working together.
And here's another thing too, is that we can trust each other too. We still have our own company internal little secrets we keep, but we can trust each other when we're talking about this kind of stuff and pretty much know that there's, I talk about agendas, but I don't think there was any agendas during today's show.
No, and I think that there's a lot of synergy that can be brought together, bringing all three of us together too, and talking about topics and trying to move this industry forward and really raise topics that probably not too many people are talking about, that need to be discussed, and podcasters need to be aware of these topics that are concerning us or the opportunities in front of us too. So
Tom made a comment earlier. So I remember telling you, Todd, last year that Spotify was going to be a major player. You were skeptical. I was skeptical in the instance that they were not allowing, and they're not allowing very many podcasters into their platform.
Yeah.
And had they not opened up, I would probably have that. Again, we'll see how podcasters do. We'll see if we get the same type of, percentage points that Libsyn seeing with their customers on Spotify. Time will tell.
Yeah.
And we'll see if they're actually going to be number 2 in our system. I want my own confirmation of that data.
Todd, you and I were both justified in our skepticism. There was no question until they changed their leadership and they took a different tact here. I think the position that we had about them was justified. I don't think that they had shown us that they had any willingness to do what it takes to be successful in the podcasting side. But now I'm getting a different impression.
Well, and it's
changed.
because they're talking, and let's be honest. Was I not happy not being able to get podcasters into Spotify? Absolutely. And so, I don't think there's any secret in that. You guys weren't happy that you weren't getting your shows in there.
No.
And hearing from our customers all the time, and we were having to send them over to a form to fill out that went into Never Never Land.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess we'll see. We'll see. And again, like I said, our first batch of shows are in, and we'll start to see what happens here.
Yeah.
And there's more players coming, and hopefully, we can have conversations with them on, and where the space is and where it's going. And again, I'm a podcaster first and foremost.
Well, and I think that it's very possible here very soon that we're going to be able to have the kind of submission process into Spotify that we would have loved to have had over the last 5 years with Apple. More of a submissions API based system. So I think that's something that's also promising too. And I would love to see Apple offer some way for all of us to be able to have some way for podcasters to submit their shows to iTunes right through their publishing platforms, yours and ours, and Libsyn's, to kind of automate this process and help people get into these platforms a lot easier. I'd also love to do an integration with TuneIn. I'd love to do, where that podcaster just goes into their publishing area of their show and clicks a button, say submit to whatever platform, and that's kind of my goal, is to try and make things so easy on that front that podcasters don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops. They don't have to format a special email and attach their cover art and all this stuff, which is often, what's happening with TuneIn right now. And to have that integration so it's easier and easier for podcasters to get their content out in all these platforms.
Well, to do it with Apple, you're going to have to require an Apple authentication API where you can,
that's right.
The person's Apple ID is going to be authenticated. The problem we run into with some hosting providers, and podcasters are now screaming bloody murder. They can't get access to their podcast stats because their hosting provider submitted their show under their Apple account and they're locked out.
That's right. So you're exactly right. There has to be a way to enter in your Apple ID and then have that be associated with that submission.
Yep.
And I did, I talked to Apple about this, and they seem to be open to the idea, but we shall see if it's ever going to happen.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, based on, I'm up to 4 support people, and the podcasting space, the creators need a lot more hand-holding at this point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do. I mean, I think we have, if you count me, because I do a fair amount of hand-holding myself, about five to 6 people that are doing just support.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a big project, and it's definitely, like you said, Todd, it's definitely getting more so. Because I think we're reaching different kinds of content creators now.
For sure.
We're reaching ones that are not very technologically savvy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the trend line is that you don't have to be as technologically savvy to make this work more and more. So that's a good trend line that's riding along with this. But still, there's issues, right? There's still compatibility with microphones and software that you got to work through, drivers, these things that are holding some podcasters back. It would be great if Windows was a lot easier to work with when it comes to producing audio. I think Apple's probably a little easier platform to work with to produce audio, but
Yeah, I had a guy that I sent, the guy that's now going to be officially, quote unquote, my stand-in host when I'm on travel. He did his first 2 episodes while I was in Florida. And so he's Rob, he's never done a podcast, and I threw him right to the, right in, and threw him to the wolves. And he, I sent him an ATR 2100, and I said, just plug right in to your, get Audacity, and he's like, calls me a couple days before I get ready to leave. He says, the Windows 10 won't recognize my 2100, and I'm like, what? So you just plug it in, or we walk through like the basic troubleshooting stuff, and he says no, and I was just like, don't worry, I'll just send you a Zune. So I went back on B&H, and he's in New Jersey, so next day delivery he had a Zune. So just even on my end, it was just like, really, the thing plugged in, it just wouldn't work. And this stuff should be seamless. It should not cause a problem. And I read somewhere that there's some obscure USB ports that won't recognize the 2100, and you have to do. And I didn't want him to have to go through all that upgrade, and do a BIOS upgrade or anything. So, just easier. Just send him a Zune.
Yeah, there's still challenges for people. I have to work with people all the time, and they don't understand the basic concepts sometimes, and you have to help them through it.
Right.
And sometimes they still don't get it, but
well,
do the best you can.
Fortunately, I don't think, for us, we haven't had too many issues with, we don't do content. So we're just, I don't have to do too much of that type of help. Once in a while, someone needs a little extra hand, but it's usually, how do I change my title, or how do I change this episode number, or my album art isn't going up, and it's, right there it says shall not be larger than this size, and it's 6.7 megs or something. It's that kind of stuff that it's usually like a 5-minute phone call, or 3 emails later. But the level of folks needing help is much, much higher. And podcasters also, I have figured out, I kind of figured this out a long time ago. The creators are all kind of a certain mindset, and boy, oh boy, they're not very patient.
No, that's right. They want to get it done now.
Not patient at all, and that's why we went to 7-day support, because it's just, we couldn't finish the day at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock on Friday and not talk to anybody until Monday. It didn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had
get some upset customers.
Oh, yeah.
Don't help them.
And some customers send you 3 emails within 5 minutes. How come you're not helping me?
Yeah. And it sounds just like that.
And it does. It does.
So you're going to be on the road next week? Is that my understanding?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I think the last time we talked, we're going to need to do it on
post NAB. I'll
audio.
be on the road. Yeah, post NAB. Yeah. So it's going to be ugly. I'm looking at my schedule, and I'm even booking Saturday meetings, which sounds insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Squeezing it in, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll have Sunday. That'll be my day of being able to maybe breathe. So, so who knows? There may even have to be some Sunday shows in there too. So, it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
But, anyway, we're right at an hour 30. So do we want to go to 2 hours today?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of ground with Rob today. I think that the whole RAD thing is something that's going to be interesting to follow. Is there anything? I haven't heard any updates at all on the IAB stuff. Is there anything?
I haven't heard anything either.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. It's been pretty slow.
Eileen was asking, what is the threshold for a podcast to actually see stats if they don't have a lot of? I think Apple said the threshold was 10. You have to have 10 downloads. But I don't think that's the case. I think some podcasters have more than 10. 10, and I'm still not seeing data at Apple. But
Yeah.
don't quote me there, but I saw something in a post someplace. So that's not from the horse's mouth. That was third party.
Todd, I haven't looked at my stats in Apple lately. Are
I looked at them once.
They capturing any more data than what was in there before? Because it was like minimal amount of data.
Well, when I went in and looked, and it was like, oh, okay, I already know this. So I haven't even been back to look. I need to log in and look. I haven't been back to look.
Yeah, I haven't either. And I'm just curious because they were only capturing data from I think it was like 10 or 12 shows.
Well, it was October or something like that. So hopefully that data hopefully it's a bigger.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyone been checking their Apple stats? How quick are they adding shows and so forth? I don't know if anyone's watching can comment, but
yeah.
So anyway, Eileen, that's the answer we have. They've got an email address. Let me give you here's the thing. The team at Apple, there's been some changes. Let me go to messages. Absolutely the best way to get a hold of anyone over there is podcast support at apple.com. That's where if you're not seeing stats and have questions or need help or need to get a show moved to your account that you own but isn't currently in your stats, podcast support at apple.com is a place. That goes into their team system. So that's it's actually podcast with an S. Podcast S.
At
apple.com. Not podcast. It's podcast support at apple.com. So I still have people coming to podcastconnect.com, my site, and saying, I get it at least once a week yelling at me, this is the worst Apple site I've ever seen. And I'm like, I'm not Apple, dude. You'd add an S in there.
Todd, scraping traffic, aren't you?
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I own the domain podcast with a T, connect.com. And for a while, everything was at Apple was podcast with an S, connect.com. So there was a little brand confusion going on there. Podcast Connect Incorporated is actually the company I do this show and Geek News Central under. So
were you redirecting that traffic over to the sign up page for? No, just kidding.
No. There's hardly anything on that site. I think the last blog post on it was like a year ago or something. So it's not like there's anything there. This is the worst Apple site ever. What is this? What are they thinking? They really fell off the wagon since Steve Jobs died. And you're seeing just, oh my God, you haven't heard it all.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Okay, well,
all right.
Don't yawning here. They just left. See, now everyone just left.
I tried to hold it back. I couldn't.
And so anyway, I get an appointment with the gym, so time to get out of here. So everyone, I'm Todd at blueberry.com or at Geek News on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, of course. Rob?
I can be found on my website, robgreenlee.com, and just now lost my voice. I can also be reached rob at voxnest.com, and that's a great way to reach out to me as well. I do 2 podcasts, this one, and I do the Spreaker Live Show at SpreakerLiveShow.com every Wednesday. So talking about podcasting. What else, right, Todd?
Yeah. Rob, I will admit, you have the world record for the most number of emails associated with your name in the podcasting space. It was Rob at Spreaker. It was Rob at Microsoft. It was Rob at Zune. And Rob at Podcast One. You've got it wrapped up, dude. So
nobody can ever catch up to me now.
I don't think they can. So everyone, thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed show 200. Send your comments and who you'd like. If you are a podcast app developer, we want you on the show. Okay? Doesn't matter. You can come on and pitch your app for an hour. So let us know. But anyway, everyone, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the New Media Show. Everyone, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, great numbers on YouTube. See you later, YouTube.